This episode of Critical Strikes is sponsored in part by Wonko's Toys and Games in Austin, Texas. Check them out online at wonkos.com for all your collectible toy and tabletop gaming needs. Hi everyone, it's Tox from critshappen.com. Thanks for watching and welcome back. We're back with another episode of Critical Strikes where we're going to take 3 different games and run them through a short micro review of each in about 15-20 minutes. Before we get started though, I need to give a quick shout out to 2 very fun and important people. First is Scott Dexter for providing us this distressed tin sign of Batman for our critical wall. This is really cool. I posted a very small picture of it on Facebook to see if anyone could figure out what it was a couple of weeks ago, and several people did pick it out as Batman's cape. It looks really cool. It's perfect. It fits on the wall just fine, and I think it's going to be a nice little addition to it. If anyone's unfamiliar with the critical wall, a few months ago we painted this wall completely white, and we asked for the fans to provide things to put up there that we'll keep up for all of our videos. So we got a little bit of a different angle today due to some prop issues, but we're working through it. But this looks really good next to the Dark Knight poster and some of the other superhero stuff we have up there as well. So I want to thank Scott. And then second, want to thank Jasmine Tan. This is George. Why is his name George? Well, if anyone remembers the old Bugs Bunny cartoon, he is soft and fluffy and I will pet him and love him and call him George. This is a stuffed skull and it's super cool. It is all kind of, fabric kind of feel, and it's stuffed, and it's not very easy to hang on the wall. So he will more than likely be joining us for videos, kind of sitting in the corner here and making his presence known. But it is really cool. One of the more unique things I've ever seen as a craft project before, let alone for critshappen.com. So thank you, Scott. Thank you, Jasmine. Very cool stuff. So, why are we here? Today we're here for 3 games, 2 of which are provided by Wonko's Toys and Games here in Austin, Texas, and then one by the publisher himself, Ian Brody. So the first is Boomtown Tycoon. This is a deck building game that is going to see you in the Wild West trying to obtain as much wealth through mining gold. Then we're going to look at Dino Dice, which is a game from Steve Jackson Games, very similar to Zombie Dice, but with a dinosaur theme. And we'll talk a little bit about the differences between those two when we jump into that. And then we also have Cthulhu Gloom. Cthulhu Gloom, if you're familiar with the original Gloom, is very much like that, but with a Lovecraftian Cthulhu theme on top, as well as a new mechanic brought in as well. So we'll talk about that. But Cthulhu and Dino Dice are provided by Wonko's. If you get a chance, you can check them out at wonkos.com. And then Ian, the publisher, provided us a copy of Boomtown Tycoon as well. So we want to thank them for doing that to provide a review for everyone here. But for now, let's go ahead and jump in and start the Critical Strikes. So let's first talk about Dino Dice. Now, if anyone is familiar with Steve Jackson's Zombie Dice, or Tasty Minstrel Games Martian Dice, this will feel very familiar. It is a press your luck dice rolling game, very similar to both of those with a different feel and a different theme. So obviously the theme is dinosaurs. However, the idea is that you own a zoo and you're trying to capture dinosaurs and bring them into your zoo. As with most games like this, there is a certain number of dice based around different colors or different symbols. In this case, there are 3 different colored dice. There are green, yellow, and red. And as you can imagine, they get harder and harder in terms of what the bad things are that could happen to you as the game goes on. Now, there's a dinosaur side that if you roll means you've captured the dinosaur. So if I were to take these 3 dice on my turn and roll them out of the cup, that's how you do it, just like the other games. You're going to pull 3 dice out and you're going to go ahead and roll 3. You're going to go ahead and keep the dinosaurs that you have off on the side and then decide, do you want to keep rolling or not? However, there is a danger of getting stomped by footprints. The footprints mean that you, very similar to Zombie Dice, get shot, but in this case you get stomped. So if I were to roll 3 stomps of any color throughout my turn, then I'm going to lose my turn and not get any points. Then there's also leaves. The leaves basically mean that you've heard the dinosaurs, but they're hiding. How a T-Rex hides, I'm not too sure, but it is possible apparently in this game. So if I rolled 3 leaves, I would have to re-roll any leaves on my next roll. So if I were to roll a dinosaur, a footprint, and a leaf, I keep the dinosaur as a point, the stomp as 1 stomp, and then I'd have to re-roll this plus 2 dice from the cup. So I would take my next roll, and I would get another stomp, another dinosaur, and a leaf. At this point, I can choose to take 2 more dice out to make up 3 total for my next roll, or I could choose to stop. And being that the reds are a little more dangerous than anything else, I would probably want to stop at this point. I would gain 2 points for getting the 2 dinosaurs, and then I would put everything back into the cup and pass it over to my opponent for them to take their turn. Now gameplay is going to continue like that, with each player taking 3 dice, rolling, pressing their luck, and continuing on, or getting stomped and handing dice over to the next player, tallying up points, and the winner is the person that achieves 20 points. Now if you like zombie dice, you will like Dino Hunt dice. The big difference though is the dice distribution. So if you see here, there are 3 yellow, 2 red, and 5 green dice for a total of 10. Zombie dice has 13 in comparative, and more red dice than not. Now what I found is that it makes it a little easier with this distribution of dice, and more open and more accessible to younger players. Now I've never graded zombie dice, but if I did, I would give it a hit. I think it's a fun game. It has good core mechanics and fun gameplay. This is the exact same thing. I will give Dino Dice a hit. However, there are some good things to know differentiating between zombie dice and this. The first is that there are different dice amounts, and that means it's going to be a little bit easier of a game. Now, I think that if you're a fan of zombie dice, but you want to be able to have a more family-friendly game and offer something for younger players to play that type of mechanic without having to worry about any kind of gunshots or things like that, or brain eating, things that maybe some parents may not want to introduce to younger kids, this is a great example, because you can either take the footprints as being stomped, or you can take the footprints as the dinosaurs ran away. So from a younger perspective, this is a little bit better of an option. And plus that there's a few less dice and a little bit easier mechanics from the push your luck, the younger players will find this a little more fun. That's been my experience, as well as some other families that we let this put this through its paces. The big thing though is that because there's only 2 red dice, if you can get past these 2 red dice, pushing your luck with the reds and the yellows are not that hard. So to give you an example, our first game I played, I rolled dinosaurs on all of the dice on my first turn. Once you can get past these 2, it's really not too hard to push your luck with these guys. But it's good to know. So again, we're going to go ahead and give it a hit. It is a fun game. It is very much like zombie dice, just a little bit lighter, a little bit leaner, and a little bit more accessible to the younger generation. Next up is Boomtown Tycoon. Boomtown Tycoon is a deck building game with a little different viewpoint of the Wild West. So the idea of Boomtown Tycoon is you are a miner or a prospector who is trying to achieve as much gold as possible. At the end of the game, whoever has the most gold is going to win. Now in the center here, you'll see 2 different rows of resources. The white bordered cards are basic resources: pickaxe, lumber, brick, food, and silver. The black border bottom row are the advanced resources, and they are labor, guns, leather, paper, and gold. On the side here are the events. Now there is an event deck, and everything is placed face up so that you have a left and a right event, and then the top of the stack. When one is purchased, then the top one will move into that, and you will get the next event. The other side has a building or a construction deck, and in this case it has the same layout with 1 card on top and then 1 card on either side, and when one is purchased, the next one moves over and you get the top hideout, or in this case gangster hideout, the top card from that construction deck. Now you don't have to have the entire deck face up. You can have it face down and then just flip over the card that's on top to be able to show the face up. It's really more of a preference thing as to what you would want to do with that. But the game starts out very simply by each player taking 3 of the basic resources, and that's going to provide a 15-card deck to start the game. Now on your turn, you can do 5 different things. You can use gold or silver to trade with the resource stack. You can use resources to buy buildings from the construction deck. You can use resources to buy an event from the event deck. You can play an event card, or you can mine gold. And to mine gold, you have to have 2 pickaxes and 10 labor. Now, as you can see, there are not that many labor cards in the whole game. So you're going to need events and you're going to need buildings to provide you labor as well. And there's several different things, like for example, this gangster hideout will provide you 2 labor. Whenever you build in a building, it will go into play in front of you and you will gain the benefits listed on that card. To construct the building, you're just going to need the symbols below on the bottom where it says construction cost. For example, again with the gangster hideout, I'm going to need 1 lumber, 1 leather, and 2 guns. If I were looking at the hotel, I would need to have 2 lumber, a leather, and nothing else. The X is put there to show every construction site has 4 boxes, and if only 3 of the 4 are needed, then an X fills up the last one. So as the hotel would go, I would need 2 lumber and 1 leather. Now, as mentioned, you start the game with 3 of the basic resources. And on your turn, you're going to begin by having 5 cards in your hand. Now, let me give you an idea of how gameplay works. You can trade silver from your hand and discard something from your hand to trade for something in the resources. Now, what I mean by that is, let's say I want to discard my silver card and I want to get rid of my food card. I would discard it from my hand and I would exchange it for leather. Even though these are basic and these are advanced, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. Now, the key is the resources I exchange for go into my hand. So now if I want, as an action later in my turn, I can spend 2 lumber and 1 leather from my hand to build the hotel. And the hotel would then stay in front of me. The silver would go in my discard pile. The hotel would stay in front of me, and I now have +3 labor. So I'm well on my way to mining gold. I still have my 3 pickaxe that are in my deck, and I have 3 labor just from my hotel, depending on what else I can build. The gangster hideout would then take its place, and the courthouse would now become a new building. Conversely, I could, if I had the resources, pay for an event and take care of one of the events as well. The events, though, when you buy them, do not go into play immediately like the buildings do. The buildings come into play and stay in play the minute you build them. The events go into your discard pile like other deck builders that you would acquire, and then become part of your hand later in a future turn, and you play them. Now, the other thing that is very interesting is when you're exchanging gold. When you're trading gold in future rounds, because you're not going to have access to it immediately, if you want to pay gold to trade resources, you can either trade, just like we did before with silver, or you can discard cards directly from your hand back to the general supply. So if I had 3 food and I knew I didn't need them anymore, I could play my gold and give 3 food back to the general resource area and get them out of my deck and thin my deck down. Now, the one key thing to know is whenever you're using silver or gold to trade for resources, you can never take gold. The only way you can get gold is to spend 2 pickaxe and 10 labor to be able to mine gold, and that's 2 and 10 per each 1 gold. Now, Boomtown Tycoon is a very different style deck builder. Because of the limited amount of labor, but the high amount of buildings and events, there's going to be a lot of fast-paced action happening. There's a lot of trading. As you can tell, there are a lot of resources to manage, and there's a lot of ditching cards. What I found is almost at times there's too much ditching cards because you will build up certain resources trying to get certain buildings, but then as you build them and other buildings come out, then you may not need those resources, so you need to then shift your supply, so to speak, in your deck. So there is a lot of deck management with it. Overall, it is pretty fun though. We have had a lot of fun playing this with 2, 3, or 4 players. 4 players seems to be very lengthier of a game than it should be. I feel that it can go a little longer. A 2-player game can take about 20 to 30 minutes. A 4-player game for us has taken on average about an hour and 15 to an hour and a half, which is a little longer than it really should take, but there's so limited amount of labor in the game from just the base cards that there's a lot of construction going on, and in a 4-player game there's a lot of people that are taking construction cards or taking event cards that will combine up with yours, because as you can see there are really limited amount of cards in both decks. It really comes down in a 4-player game to a lot of good timing. But we have found this to be a really fun 2 and 3-player deck building game. Overall, I would give this a hit. And if you're interested in it, there are links in the video description as well as in the video that will take you to thegamecrafter.com. You can check it out there. It's available right now. There is some potential for this to be published and republished in the future, I think, so we'll see where that takes them. But the only thing that detracted me from this, in all honesty, is the artwork. It's very basic. It is very rustic and Western looking, but it is very simple. The gold, for example, just looked kind of like melted bouillon. So I think the artwork could have been a little different to my tastes, but it doesn't mean that someone else isn't going to enjoy it as well. The fun thing about this, though, is the gameplay, and it is, in a 2 and 3-player game, pretty fast, pretty furious, and allows you to get the deck building itch with a little more resources than you may be used to, and in a little bit different style, using the events and the construction cards than you may be used to in other deck building games. So overall, Boomtown Tycoon from Ian Brody and from The Game Crafter gets a hit. Finally, we have Cthulhu Gloom from Atlas Games. Now, if you are familiar with the original Gloom, this will feel very, very familiar. Cthulhu Gloom is based on the same principle that Gloom is based on. You have one of 4 families, each having 5 family members. And it's your job to use these see-through cards to play events or play modifiers that will go on top of them and provide what's called pathos points. The goal is to have the most negative worth when your family is dead or when another family is dead. The goal is you're trying to make your family members have the worst day possible, and in this case, inside of a Lovecraftian universe of Cthulhu and destruction. Give them the worst possible days and then kill them with a modifier that is a death card that is like this, that says rest in peace on the back. What's going to happen is you will have events and different impacts on the cards that will give you points or not give you points. But as you can see in this case, I have negative 30 points on this character. If I were to play this and kill that character, this black circle, when flipped over, actually covers up my points. So I only have negative 15 points when killing them. There are also symbols on the side of the cards that will impact the gameplay. Different cards and different abilities will say if you have certain symbols you can do certain things. But the goal is, if I either kill all my family or someone else kills all of their family, then the game ends. And every dead member of the family counts as points at the end of the game. So necessarily you don't have to kill all of your family. If someone else kills all of their family first, and then you have 3 people dead, but your pathos points have more negative worth than anyone else's, you could win the game. Gloom is all about storytelling. The concept behind it is absolutely unique and a lot of fun. These see-through cards go very, very well. They're actually waterproof too, which is a nice little addition. Not saying that anyone's playing inside of swimming pools at all, but if you're ever outside, playing outside and it starts to rain, it is good to know. The cards are beautiful. I really liked Gloom. I really enjoyed playing that game, both for the gameplay and the storytelling aspect. But the color that is thrown into the Lovecraftian version here in Cthulhu is really, really nice. As you can see from the family members, they are all very unique, very interesting looking. The big thing that this game brings that the original game did not was story cards. And there's a very small amount of story cards that you're going to separate from the main deck. You're going to shuffle up and put 2 of them into play in the center of the game. And as an action, during your turn you have 2 actions to be able to play events or untimely deaths and things like that. One of your actions can be to choose one of the stories. Now the stories are going to have a requirement, so the family must have X. In this case you have to have 2 of a specific symbol. Once you have that though, you can take this as an action, place it next to your family and start to gain the benefits, or in some cases the negatives, that are going to impact your family. You can only have one story in front of you at any given time, so if you decide to take the other story, you have to put the other one back in the center. But it makes the stories very, very impactful to the game and very, very important when you're playing a 4-player game, because only 2 players are going to have access to the stories. So sometimes you may not want to necessarily play a certain modifier on your character, but it may help you obtain a story, so it may be something you'd want to go ahead and play and get involved with. Overall, the crux of Gloom is telling a story. It's playing things on top of your characters and explaining why terrible things have happened to them. It is a loud, ruckus, fun time at the table. And if you've enjoyed Gloom, you will definitely enjoy Cthulhu Gloom. Even if you don't like Lovecraftian and Cthulhu themes, the comedic responses to what could happen to your characters is plentiful inside of this game. So if you've enjoyed Gloom, you will definitely enjoy Cthulhu Gloom. And just like the original Gloom, we will go ahead and give Cthulhu Gloom a crit as well. It's colorful, it's interesting, it's unique, it's devilishly morbid in a comical way and provides a wonderfully fun time for everyone playing at the table, whether you're playing in a 2-player game or whether you're playing in a 4-player game. So there you have it. Boomtown Tycoon and Dino Hunt Dice get hits, while Cthulhu Gloom walks away with a crit. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Critical Strikes. If you're interested in more information, you can check out wonkos.com for Dino Hunt Dice and Cthulhu Gloom, or thegamecrafter.com for Boomtown Tycoon. In the meantime, feel free to leave your comments below in the YouTube channel. We'd love to hear from you no matter where you are in the world, if you've played these games, or if you haven't and you're interested in learning more about them. Feel free to leave your comments below. You can of course join in on the discussions on Facebook, on Twitter, and Google Plus by searching Crits Happen, or at our homepage at critshappen.com. But until we see you next time, we hope you have a lot of fun mining gold, finding dinosaurs, and killing off your family, Lovecraftian style. Thanks so much for watching. Keep rolling those dice, and we hope they're all crits.